Here we are again, everyone. You know, I mean, we celebrate Thanksgiving in different ways in different cultures. And in America, you know, we have a turkey, and it happens last Thursday in November. But I've been so overwhelmed in the last 2 days, meeting all of you people, reading about you, listening to your stories. I feel it's a time for Thanksgiving right now. I have an unfinished song, and but I think it's apt to just begin with that, to say thank you to all of you, amazing heroes. Thank you. There was a saint by the name of Lal Shahbaz Qalandar, and he was known as the Red Falcon because he's remembered as someone who was all light, all transcendence. And this is a very old folk tune called the Mast Qalandar. It's a celebration, and I know it's uncomfortable in these seats, and but if you can move around, this is more of breaking the wall, destroying the wall, and creating the circle of light.
लाल मेरी बद रखियो भला झूले लालन लाल मेरे लाल मेरी बद रखियो भला झूले लालन सिंधड़ी दा सेवण दा सफी शाहबाज कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर अली दा पहला नंबर दमादम मस्त कलंदर सखी शाहबाज कलंदर हो लाल मेरी हो लाल मेरे चार चराग तेरे पलन हमेशा चार चराग तेरे पलन हमेशा पंजवा बालन आयो भला झूले लालन पंजवा बालन पंजवा बालन आयो भला झूले लालन सिंधड़ी दा सेवण दा सखी शाहबाज कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर अली दा पहला नंबर दमादम मस्त कलंदर सखी शाहबाज कलंदर हो लाल मेरी हो लाल मेरे चढ़न तेरी नौबत आजे तेरी नौबत आजे नाल बजे खड़ याल भला झूले लालण नाल बजे खड़ याल भला झूले लालण सिंधड़ी दा सेवण दा सफी शाहबाज हुमत मस्त कलंदर अली दा पहला नंबर हुमत मस्त कलंदर सफी शाहबाज कलंदर ओ लाल मेरी हो लाल मेरे Ali Mola, Mola, Ali Mola, Ali Mola, Mola, Ali Mola, Ali Mola, Mola, Ali Mola, Ali Mola, Mola, Ali Mola. Tumado mast kalandar, Ali da pehla number. Tumado mast kalandar, Sagi Shahbaz kalandar. Tumado mast kalandar, Ali da pehla number. Tumado mast kalandar. सगी शाहबाज कलंदर तुम्हारा मस्त 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 कलंदर हो
Thank you so much. Preetam Singh on the tablas. Thank you.
Salman, I think it was a great day when you put down your stethoscope and you took up your guitar. One of the most wonderful musical performances I've ever heard. I can't thank you enough. And your magical accompanist on the tabla, Preetam Singh. 2 days ago, we didn't have a tabla accompanist. I think that someone got hold of Professor Yunus's Aladdin's lamp and conjured a wonderful accompanist for us. I'm Sally Osberg, CEO of the Skoll Foundation, and it's my great joy to welcome you all here tonight. Standing here this evening, I can't help but think back to last summer when I traveled to Zambia and to South Africa to spend time with 2 prior Skoll awardees, Ann Cotton and Taddy Bletcher. During a trip to Zimbabwe in 1999, Ann Cotton realized that Africa would never conquer poverty and disease until its women and girls were educated. Selling baked goods, she raised enough money to send 32 girls to school. And that's how the campaign for female education was born. By 2005, that number had grown to nearly 250,000 African women and girls, citizens, absolutely, absolutely. Citizens whose lives and opportunities have been transformed by CamFed, which has provided them with access to education, mentoring, and opportunity they would once only have dreamed of. Taddy Bletcher was ready to emigrate from South Africa when he paused, taking a second look at his native country. Yes, he saw aching poverty, but apartheid had just come to its end. And Taddy also saw overwhelming human potential. At that moment, he canceled his ticket and made a life-changing decision to do something for his country and for his fellow citizens. In 1999, He opened Sea to City Campus to provide disadvantaged South African young people the chance to earn a 4-year business degree for less than the cost of that canceled transatlantic business class ticket. CETA provides a world-class business education to thousands of students, successfully graduating more than 1,800 to date, men and women who contribute more than $60 million a year to South Africa's economy. What you quickly learn when you spend time with Anne and Taddy, and more important, as they would be the first to point out those they serve, is that the one thing terms like social entrepreneur can't begin to describe is what hope looks like. Hope is what I saw, what I realized was very much alive in those countries, hope shining in the faces and voices of thousands of young people, as well as in their families and their communities. Hope that their lives mattered, that they had the power to create better futures for themselves, their villages, their countries. Not fanciful hope, but realized hope. Hope so tangible you can feel it, beating like a heart or a tabla that tunes its rhythm to other hearts and other guitars. In Afghanistan, Paraguay, Pakistan, Kenya, India, Zimbabwe, Cambodia. Hope realized is the promise of social entrepreneurship, and that is what we celebrate here tonight. Our 2007 Skoll Award recipients are fulfilling the promise of social entrepreneurship. They see beyond what others shrug off as the status quo to what's possible, and then they create something new that gets children off the street and onto a far better path, that changes consumption patterns by measuring our ecological footprint, that transforms villages, empowers women, connects children to children for change, reverses the world's collapsing fish supply. One of the social entrepreneurs we honor tonight has called it as it deserves to be called. She named her organization Kashf, Arabic for miracle. As so many of us know, it is one thing to hear about the work of social entrepreneurs, but quite another to experience it for yourself. To help bridge that gap, we again will show you 4 short films tonight. Let's take a look at the first 2, which were shot in the field with International Bridges to Justice and Village Reach.
My name is Karen Chet, and in the year 2000, I founded International Bridges to Justice. IBJ is dedicated to ensuring that every man, every woman, every child throughout the world has effective defense counsel. Most countries, almost virtually every country in the world, has passed new laws saying you have a right to a lawyer, you have a right not to be tortured. But unfortunately, in even many of these countries, people are arbitrarily detained and tortured on a daily basis.
Lawyer and public defender Karen Chet first came face to face with torture in Cambodia in the mid-90s. She had come to help rebuild a legal system that was utterly decimated by the reign of terror of the Khmer Rouge.
Cambodia is a place that's synonymous with a very torturous past. A place where there is absolutely no rule of law and where millions of people were killed with absolutely no presumption of innocence. Over a decade ago, 1994, when I first arrived in Cambodia, there were less than 10 attorneys in the country. At that time, there were laws on the books that said you have a right to a lawyer, you have a right not to be tortured. But practically everyone who came through that prison system, practically everyone I met in prison said, yes, I was tortured.
With Cambodia's legal system in tatters, torture was still viewed as the quickest, cheapest way for police to extract a confession from the accused, guilty or not. Former police official Oak Van Det regularly witnessed the use of torture.
ដូច្នេះហើយមធ្យោបាយសំខាន់ដែលសង្គមយើងទទួលស្គាល់ Our superiors demanded a confession from every suspect who was brought in. The only way we knew how to get it was to use force and torture the suspect until they confessed.
To many throughout the world, it seemed a hopeless situation. But Karen Chad was convinced that Cambodia was ripe for change. From her experience as a public defender, Karen knew that people who have effective legal counsel are far less likely to be tortured. And so she set out to train as many public defenders as possible. Soon, she and her fellow defenders were conducting rights campaigns in prisons, writing manuals for judges and lawyers on how a legal system is supposed to work, and helping to build some of Cambodia's first arraignment courts.
What IBJ does is to create the architecture and infrastructure so that the letter of the law isn't just a piece of paper, but becomes a living, breathing reality in the everyday fabric of life.
Today, Oak Van Dep is a trained public defender working with IBJ to create an entirely new way of doing things.
IBJ plays a vital role in Cambodian society. It trains lawyers to represent clients, teaches police how to seek evidence, and also encourages Cambodians to demand that their rights be respected.
Inspired by what it has been able to accomplish in Cambodia, IBJ is now training and supporting public defenders around the world. In China, a country striving to improve its legal system, IBJ has established permanent resource centers and trained thousands of defenders who are working to bring justice and human rights to China's 1.3 billion citizens.
In China, we did one advisement rights campaign, and we had 3,000 members of the Youth Communist League, Chinese Youth Communist League. We put up a poster that it went from 1,000 copies to 10,000 copies to 360,000 copies to over 500,000, and we have had campaigns for the last few years in every single province in China.
One of the most encouraging signs for IBJ has been how genuinely eager governments in Asia, Africa, and Latin America have been to work with IBJ to adopt the organization's blueprint for building more humane justice systems. Equally encouraging is the growing number of public defenders and law firms joining IBJ's ranks.
And we see that really for the worldwide community right now. It's going to be everyone who stands up to do this. It's going to be government officials who have been very welcoming. It's going to be corporations that lend their support. It's going to be businesses that realize that there has to be institutionalized rule of law in terms of hopes for globalization. It's almost like seeing all the rocks when you're here at Angkor Wat. And each one, has a number and a place in the architecture of it. And each one will form a very, very important role for the base. Human rights in this day and age isn't about the extraordinary. It's not about the impossible. It's about building the simple building blocks and being committed to just doing the everyday grunge work of putting the system in place so that we can really create a culture where the rule of law is in the fabric of society.
children are still dying because they happen to live in the wrong place, and that's not acceptable. It's very important that we find ways to reach children and mothers and families wherever they are.
Mozambique is one of the poorest countries in the world. You have children dying of preventable diseases like diphtheria, like polio, measles, like tetanus, diseases which in the developed world don't cause deaths at all.
It's not acceptable that a child in the Western world would live longer than a child in a remote areas, and we can change that.
Eu tenho 22 anos. Eu tenho 4 filhos. E 2 filhos perdi. Estava doente. É preciso você forçar muito, mas por causa de falta de dinheiro aqui.
There is a cure available. There's just the cure doesn't reach the population that we're talking about. Typically, people will walk between 5 to 10 kilometers to get to the nearest clinic.
It's a long walk, yes, but their children need the vaccines, so they have to go. There is no other way. Unfortunately, sometimes when they go to the clinics after walking 5, 10, or 20 kilometers, they go there and there is no vaccines at all. The vaccines did not reach the district because the transport was broken, or the vaccines was spoiled because the freezer was broken for 2, 3, and more days, or because it was raining and there is no passage to the other village.
When it rains in Mozambique, it rains really in Mozambique. It's like someone opened the sky and then pour the water on top of your head. The infrastructure is not prepared to accommodate that much water, so usually the water stays on the street and becomes very difficult to drive around. Typically, it will take about 3 days to reach the most remote village. We have families that have to walk 2 or 3 hours to get to the clinics and be told that they have to come back the next day. So if you do that a couple of times, you will give up on the system. So my goal was to try to find a way to ensure that that doesn't happen. So we selected a territory in northern Mozambique where we tried to design a system that would make sure that the kids, wherever they live, will be reached by existing vaccines and medicine. Cabo Delgado had the lowest immunization coverage. It was the poorest province when we started in 2000. And we decided that if we succeed in Cabo Delgado, we could succeed almost anywhere. So Village Reach works with the government and local partners to ensure that vaccines get to the most remote areas of the country. The vaccine is a temperature-sensitive commodity, so you have to keep it within a very strict range. And that requires a very rigorous refrigeration and transport system. In Cabo Delgado, they were using kerosene-powered refrigerators. Those fridges were not very stable. So we did a study, we looked around in Africa and other parts and determined that the best fridges for the province was propane-powered. The challenge we faced immediately was that there was no propane in the province, so we had to start our propane company. Vikas operates like any typical energy company. It imports gas, bottle it at its plant, and then distribute it to customers that include the Minister of Health for the clinics. Then we sell it to commercial users. And gradually we're setting up programs to facilitate the adoption of propane by families.
Our program is not only a social program, it has a component of, let me call it, social entrepreneurship.
What's innovative about Vikas is that the profit from Vikas will be plowed back into our health system so that the income can be used to support and expand our healthcare system. We needed a local partner because we needed to really make sure that we understood what the challenges were.
Village Reach needed to have someone who was already very much involved with the local realities, living in the terrain, working with communities, and that was FDC, the Foundation for Community Development.
FDC and Village Reach coordinate with the Ministry of Health to organize a logistics system that take the vaccines, but not only the vaccines, but also the medicines and other medical equipment and the gas to the districts and from the districts to the village.
It's not easy to reach the most remote areas of the world, and that's why they haven't been reached. And we've done it, and it's working in northern Mozambique. We're reaching now 5 million people in Cabo Delgado and Nampula.
Agora não há falta. Basta você ir lá apanhar vacina.
We did not only concentrate in providing vaccines. We made sure that we create the basic conditions for vaccines to be stored properly and to be protected from high temperatures, because Mozambique is a very, very hot country.
When we arrived in northern Mozambique, the official statistics were that 1 in 3 children were fully immunized. And after 5 years of operation, we've brought that number up to 9 in 10 children being fully immunized. That for us is really success in the sense that we build trust in the public health system. What we've proven in northern Mozambique is that people are ready to take control of their life and to change their communities and change their life.
Bom dia,
And if you work closely with individuals and communities, you'd be surprised by the level of latent energy and enthusiasm that you can unleash.
So it can be a model for Africa, but if we are to reach every child everywhere, we need to concentrate on that one last mile. And that's what we are doing.
I'd now like to ask Karen Shea and Blaise Jujaseto to stand, and their 2005 and 2006 Skoll Awardee colleagues to also stand. Please join me in honoring them. And they're already standing, but so I'd like to ask our Skoll board directors also, well, you sat down again, but rise, please, so that I can acknowledge and thank you. Jim DiMartini, Roger Martin, Deborah Dunn, Kirk Hansen, and Peter Hero. Of course, the vision, energy, and passion of our board is not only a credit to our founder, but a reflection of him as well. When people ask me who Jeff Skoll reminds him of, I don't usually share with them what I'm about to share with you. When I think of Jeff, I think of Charles Dickens. Of course, not all of us studied English literature as I did, and it may be a long time since you've thought about A Tale of Two Cities or Oliver Twist, even though you probably had at some time to read one of those classics and can recall some pretty colorful characters. What's the connection to Jeff? Well, through all of his books, Dickens prodded millions of readers into caring about the poor, into seeing their intelligence, their personalities, their humanity. Dickens made it impossible to ignore and unacceptable to exploit people whose lives clearly mattered. No less an expert than Daniel Webster once remarked that Dickens had done more to ameliorate the condition of the English poor than all the statesmen Great Britain had sent to Parliament. The poor not only saw Dickens as their champion, they read him, as did the rich. Dickens' stories, in turn, helped inspire social change, from the abolition of child labor, to the rise of unions, to the improvement of public health, to sanitary reform. His was the ultimate example of what the Victorians called fiction with a purpose, social change through storytelling. If this generation has its version of Charles Dickens, I think it just might be our founder and chairman, Jeff Skoll. Jeff became famous by helping to create the largest virtual community in the world through eBay. Many of the people here have also come to know Jeff through the foundation's focus on social entrepreneurs and our strategy of investing, connecting, and celebrating. Today, Jeff is shining a light on the critical issues of our time through stories told with film and through other media. Stories meant to inspire action, and through actions large and small, individual and collective, lead to positive social change. It's Jeff's own version of fiction and nonfiction with a purpose through his media company, Participant Productions. Taken together, Jeff's work through eBay, the foundation, and Participant gives us more than hope. Yes, it gives us inspiration, but that it empowers and entrusts us to get out there and be the change we wish to see in the world. I, along with so many extraordinary people here tonight, feel privileged to be taking that journey with him. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce the Foundation's founder and chairman, Jeff Skoll.
Wow. Sally, thank you very much. I think you may have set great expectations here. And truthfully, if I'm Dickens, Sally is the editor, the one who takes the ill-formed ideas and the abstract ideas and turns them into something real and tangible. And so, Sally, on behalf of everyone here, I want to thank you for all that you do for social entrepreneurs. Thank you. And as Sally's introduction implied, I've been introduced in different ways over the years. At one point I was the eBay guy, and another point I was the foundation guy, and then I was the movie guy. And at each time there was a different language to be learned. At eBay it was the language of business. With the foundation it's the language of social change. And in Hollywood, it's a different language altogether. In fact, it may be the only language where what someone says and what they mean are actually exactly opposite. For example, when someone says the script needs a final polish, what they mean is it needs to be completely rewritten from scratch. If they say, I'd like some input, what they mean is, I want to completely take over the project. And one of the things I overheard when I was at the Oscars this year was someone leaned over to one of the Best Actress nominees and said, I haven't seen your film, but you were terrific in it. And the reason I enjoy coming here year after year is what you see is what you get. The heroes are really heroes, and you mean what you say, and you do what you say you're going to do. You lead the way to hope and a positive outlook for the future. By contrast, 60 years ago, a group of physicists got together and created something called the doomsday clock, which is meant to indicate how close we are to the end of the world, and they initially set the hands of the clock at 7 minutes to midnight. Well, that same group made news earlier this year by moving those hands 2 clicks closer to midnight. Much of the coverage focused on a certain British scientist named Martin Rees, who actually places odds and offers bets on when the world will end, which raises the interesting question, if you win, how will you collect? And Rees says that civilization has only a 50% chance of surviving until the year 2100. And I pause on that for a minute, a 50% chance of surviving another century. And I wondered what made him so pessimistic. So I looked up his background, and it turns out that Dr. Rees is a cosmologist at Cambridge University. Need I say more? If he was a professor here at Oxford, he'd be part of this conference, and he'd be meeting you, and he'd be hearing your stories, and I think he'd have a much more positive outlook of the future, wouldn't you say? And that's why we say that social entrepreneurs have 2 kinds of power. One is the power to actually make change through direct work, one child at a time or one village at a time. But the other is the opportunity to show what's possible and to move from cynicism to hope. And what we celebrate tonight are people who believe and act on the unshakable conviction that individuals acting alone or in groups can change the world. As you've heard this week, our job at Skoll is to invest, connect, and celebrate. And I've spent a lot of time over the last 3 years focused on that celebrate part of the mission, because I believe the world needs to hear more stories of how people are making a difference. In the past year, we've had a dramatic example of what can happen when an inspiring story reaches a critical mass of people. As many of you will recall, last year at this forum, we had Al Gore as a speaker. And at the time, Al and I discussed a decision we had made to turn his global warming slideshow into a movie, into a documentary, because we felt that we could get the message out there a lot more quickly than Al going around the world doing his presentation to 100 or 200 people at a time. Well, a lot has changed since then. We were very surprised, frankly, that the documentary became a hit. And the film won 2 Academy Awards. Al has been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, and he's become a movie star. He's also earned a few new nicknames through this. His friends call him the Goracle. And a participant, we now call Al the George Clooney of global warming. Most importantly, the film has changed the debate on climate change around the world. But here's the part of the story that most people don't know. The documentary was only part of the equation. With Al's leadership, we helped to assemble a large group of organizations, trade unions and environmentalist groups and auto workers and businesses and government leaders to band together on the issue because it was of such mutual importance. And we then launched an aggressive campaign online on a website called climatecrisis.net. And that site has been visited by more than 3 million people, who in turn have offset hundreds of thousands of tons of carbon dioxide, the equivalent of taking tens of thousands of cars off the road. And we've been told anecdotally that indirectly, people have offset carbon 10 times more than that from seeing the film. The film itself has become mandatory viewing in schools in England and Scotland and most of Scandinavia. And even in the US, where it's not mandatory viewing, we've sent 50,000 DVDs to high school teachers upon individual request to show the film. We also launched a program called Train the Trainer, where Al himself trained 1,000 people to give his slideshow around the world. And already these trainees have given more presentations than Al has made in over 15 years. And with Al's support, on July 7th of this year comes a big event, simultaneous music concerts on all 7 continents, including Antarctica, to further spread the word about climate change in a version of Live Aid that's being called Live Earth. There are now 6 bills in front of the US Congress to impose a mandatory cap and a trade system in the US to cut carbon output by 25%. And we believe at least one of those bills will land on President Bush's desk to sign by next summer. And all of this stemmed from Al's persistence, stamina, and hard work to make sure that his message was heard. So why do I mention all of this? Because I know that there is that same kind of power, that same kind of inspiration in all the folks that we honor here tonight, and in the stories that virtually everyone in this room has to tell. And these stories are held together with this unseen thread that binds us all together in this greater quest. Dr. Ashok Khosla, who's here tonight, was one of the people who inspired Al Gore to continue his fight. And Dr. Khosla himself was inspired by Gandhi, who also inspired the work of Joe Mediev, whose organization, Graham Vikas, is being honored here tonight. Peter Gabriel was inspired to get involved in Africa by social activists like Desmond Tutu, fighting to end apartheid. And Peter's been thrown out of some countries for his work. Today he's sharing a stage with Salman Ahmad, whose band Junoon was thrown out of Pakistan for their work as peace activists. We're all honored to be here with Nobel Peace Prize winner Dr. Yunus, and he shares a stage tonight with Rojana Zafar, who was inspired to quit her job in Pakistan to establish the Kashf Foundation after a chance meeting with Muhammad Yunus. And she was told that microfinance would never work in Pakistan, and Dr. Yunus said, "Believe in yourself," and she did. And as a result of that, she's helped lift over 100,000 families above the poverty line. In fact, the Skoll Foundation itself and the Skoll Center and this forum wouldn't exist without the pioneering work of Bill Drayton at Ashoka, who inspired all of us to believe in a different kind of activist called a social entrepreneur. And I believe that the world and Dr. Martin Rees need to hear these great and inspiring stories. Peter Gabriel once wrote, "You can blow out a candle, but you can't blow out a fire. Once the flames begin to catch, the wind will blow it higher." And if we work together and hope together and dream together, I know that we can make this world a better place. And if we do this, imagine the headlines we might see in 10 years. Well, our awardees this evening are some of the people who will help take us there. And before we move to the awards presentation, let's take a look at two of the other films that highlight the kind of work we're here to celebrate tonight, Ceres and Sita. Thank you.
The Earth is warming. Mankind is very likely responsible for that, and the need for action is now.
We believe that climate change and other environmental matters belong on the agenda of every company.
The investment community was never a party at the table. They just weren't there. Ceres brought them in.
Ceres is a nonprofit organization that brings together environmentalists and investors to work with companies and to push them to get to their greatest potential and perhaps beyond on sustainability issues, to set goals and to meet those goals.
Ceres has never related to the environment or to the economic sector as an us versus them proposition. Our fundamental obligation is to figure out how to make our environmental aspirations support our economic performance and vice versa.
Ceres brought the issue of global warming to the New York Stock Exchange. When we first met with Marshall Carter, the chairman, he said, "We don't deal with environmental issues. The New York Stock Exchange has existed for 213 years, and that's not the business we're in." And we talked about why the financial impacts on every company listed on the New York Stock Exchange were great and vast, and he said, "I'm convinced." So working with the investor community and with the corporate community, defining climate and other sustainability issues as financial issues and as business issues, and then defining what an action plan ought to look like is what Ceres does. We built with the corporate community something called the Global Reporting Initiative, which we see as a gold standard for corporate reporting, and it allows companies to disclose what kind of impact they have on their communities, on workers, on the environment, and to put financial value on that. And companies don't always listen to advocates, but one group of people companies listen to is their owners. Ceres is about working with $3.7 trillion worth of institutional investors who are part of our network, who have made it clear that companies ought to act on climate change because it is the best thing for their shareholders, and they ought to act now.
When I do my investment decision-making, I want it to be based upon the facts. Ceres has been a very important interlocutor, and that is bringing together the scientists with people on Wall Street and also other corporate leaders so we can all understand what the science is and think about ways we should be responding to it.
As the Chief Investment Officer for New York City's pension funds, our 5 systems have over $100 billion in assets. Clearly, it's important, both in short term and, but more important, the long term, to look at sustainability and sustainability issues. We think that works to a positive bottom line.
Ceres is creating the playbook for integrating the social and the technological revolutions that we need to do. What's new is that corporate America, the business sector, has to be at the forefront of this revolution. Typically, revolutions aren't led by corporate leaders, and they're not led by elected officials. They're grassroots-based, they're led by the citizenry. We don't have the time for that. We need strong leadership in the corporate sector, and Ceres is a critical partner in creating that leadership so that we can accelerate the pace of this technological and social revolution. It really can be a win-win for companies that step up to the sustainability challenge.
What we know is that if we're emitting carbon into the atmosphere, sooner or later, that's something that we're going to be charged for. It could create a liability for us. We've experienced such things in the past. And therefore, to adopt a strategy that recognizes the cost on the environment of emitting carbon and doing that sooner as opposed to later actually positions us best with the shareholders, with the investment community, and with our customers.
What we find is that those companies that are paying attention to their potential environmental liabilities, but also the potential opportunities they have to make green by being green, these companies tend to be very well governed and tend to be viewed quite favorably by shareholders.
Our investor network is a crucial and motivating factor for companies to actually change and to get on with the business of changing sooner rather than later, because their very owners are demanding it.
Ceres is like a harbor pilot guiding a corporate freighter into an unknown harbor with treacherous shoals. Ceres' record is one of integrity and transparency and straight talk. So corporate leaders know that they can trust Ceres.
Being concerned about sustainability can be about making money, can be about motivating a workforce, can be about bringing in new customers in a way that never happened before. These things go hand in hand. The economy and the environment are no longer at odds. They are one intertwined set of affairs that run to the strength of a company.
South Africa today is a sea of youth with no direction, no guidance. These kids roam around the townships. They grow up in shacks, in squatter camps.
Those kids there, they don't have educated parents. They grow up there, their mothers are not working. They don't have anybody to look up to.
In the township, in actual fact, being a failure is accepted. Nobody is going to punish you for that. Nobody's going to tell you to dream big. Nobody's going to tell you anything.
So it's actually a huge challenge that we're facing in this country, which is to try and pull the youth back. Traditionally, People have always looked at Africa as a basket case, and they've said Africans are not able to do it for themselves. So when they're sick, we send medicines. When people are starving to death, there's a food drop somewhere, and the food disappears or it goes rotten. As far as we're concerned, that's a superficial way of thinking about development. Africans have genius. They have the ability to create for themselves. And it was really around that philosophy that we decided to start to create the first free university in South Africa.
Come quick, come quick. Let's go to class. Come. How are you doing?
We wanted to prove that it was possible to take a child off the streets who had come through a very disadvantaged education and turn them into a chartered accountant, turn them into a merchant banker, a stockbroker, Java programmer. Because if we could prove that it was possible, we could take the country forward into a new reality.
For the next 3 years, do nothing else but work towards your vision. You cannot copy your friend's vision. See it, guys. Please, picture it. Do you have a vision of your own? Yes. Specific. Yes. I even know the color of my car. Guess what? It's black.
Most universities, it's a money-based model. The students have to pay a lot of money. The faculty get paid a lot of money. Everything is just expensive. We're just like, you know, a mother teaches her child for free. Education should be free.
Yeah, at CEDA, I think you guys did quite a good job. I used to come out there and it was really well run.
CEDA is unique in that our students run the campus itself, and obviously that helps us to cut down a lot of costs. We've got our cleaning services, we've got your basic operations. By having our students running the campus, they start to understand basic principles of management, basic principles of operations. As a result, by the time they go out to the workplace, they've already been acquiring a certain level of skills.
We've had to find a way of getting materials, teachers, money, making it accessible so that we could reinvent this paradigm of university. If we get the support and if people adopt these ideas, we could open up universities, colleges, vocational schools, and relevant high schools right across the whole of Africa for next to nothing, and they could be fully self-sufficient.
It was tough, man, growing up here, you know. Not much resources, not much money, not much place.
I was raised in Orange Farm by a single mother. We had times we would not have money or lunch when going to school. I wake up, I have nothing to eat. I go to school, I have nothing to eat. I mean, when I got to CEDA, I was just 17. I'd been taking drugs at that point. And when I came here, it was a completely different environment.
He was just wild in the beginning. He was insane. And slowly but surely, he started to completely transform his life.
It's been like a quantum leap in growth for me. I have grown manifold. Philly, how's it going? I'm fine. Is it all good?
He's now created his own school in Orange Farm out of nothing. He's just taken the CEDA example, and I think he's got about 25 students of his own. And he's an amazing, amazing human being.
Oh, here's an announcement. Guys, we're going to be having a high-speed internet connection in a month's time. Now it's confirmed.
In South Africa, we have this concept of Ubuntu. That is, I am who I am because we are who we are, that we all belong to each other. None of us exist in isolation. Takiso is one of many, many students who's proving this concept of Ubuntu, giving so much more than we could have ever dreamed back into his community.
I started off living in a shack. It was a bit challenging to get your things done. You would have to pick a time in the middle of the night where you're going to wake up and go sit in the kitchen, and you would have your little spot and start doing your own homework. So it was quite a challenge.
Mina grew up in Soweto. Her mother died when she was in her second last year of school.
I was angry. I think I didn't want to go on. I said, why? Why me? Why now? Why do you keep on doing this to us? I had no plan.
It's incredibly rare in South Africa today to find a young person who grew up in a normal, stable family. They just pretty much don't exist. CEDA found her, brought her into the university.
I believe that CEDA believed in me. From that experience, I've learned to believe in myself. I've learned to believe that if I think just a slightest thought that I can do this, I have the potential to do that.
She got snapped up into a job. In fact, she's out working at SAP out of Germany. It's one of the biggest software companies in the world.
Knock, knock.
She's still living in Soweto, where she grew up in the family house, and she's now supporting her sister. So she's pretty much become the breadwinner of this family of orphans.
Typically people say that it takes a community to raise a child. CEDA, we say no, it takes a child to raise a village. Now, every month, I buy groceries for my family, I send them money. 2 months ago, we started a business for my mom, selling clothes and shoes. That gives me really, really deep joy.
I'm gaining happiness because I know this is the beginning of a new life. Sometimes when you're on a situation of poverty, you don't believe that you might come out of it just like that. After how many years, I can see where we're going now. Yes, I'm proud of him.
And I hope that one day I'll be able to build my mom a really big house, and my mom should live like a queen. She is a queen of my heart.
Today we have 3,300 graduates earning $25 million in salaries this year, and that's money going back to families that just had absolutely nothing. So we're creating a human chain. It's a human network. And I do believe we could change Africa, and I do believe we could change the developing world if we could create a human network where everybody's holding hands. It's only really selfishness that stops us from building stable, decent societies.
When we come to CEDA, we all from different backgrounds, but something makes us one. We have this will, we have this drive, we have this passion of wanting to bring change.
It encourages its students to really fly high, really, really go even beyond the skies.
It creates leaders. We are the leaders of this country.
And this is really what CEDA's trying to do, is be a life raft that pulls people out of this majority of the population into the other side of the river where there is employment and opportunity. And as we pull them, they pull everybody else behind them, and that is what our model is.
I want to acknowledge the great teamwork that went into the video you saw that realized Jeff's vision. I want to acknowledge the tremendous accomplishment of Phil Collis and Laura Vase. Special thanks to Carl Biker and Mitch Wilson of Red Hill Productions, Michael Schwartz of Kika Media, and to our remarkable Skoll Foundation executive producers, Paula Kravitz and Sandy Hurst. For human rights activists, one of the great achievements of the second half of the 20th century was ending that brutal system of racial apartheid in South Africa. For millions of activists around the world, before South Africa became a cause, it was a song. Written by Peter Gabriel, the song Biko opened millions of eyes to the death of anti-apartheid activist Stephen Biko in police custody in 1977. For Peter, Stephen Biko's death sparked a lifelong commitment to human rights. In 1988, that commitment led to Peter's involvement in the Human Rights Now tour of Amnesty International. He was moved by the stories he heard from survivors of human rights abuses and struck by the lack of attention they received. He also happened to be carrying one of the first camcorders and realized the potential of video as a tool against abuse. 4 years later, not long after the video of Rodney King's assault at the hands of 4 Los Angeles police showed the power of technology to expose human rights violations, Peter founded Witness. Its mission to distribute video cameras and now video cell phones to people across the world to expose human rights abuses and their aftermath on film, to force change. Since 1992, Witness has built partnerships with organizations in 70 countries and brought to light cases of torture and injustice that would never have been known otherwise. Today, Peter is leading an effort to build a video hub where evidence of human rights abuses can be uploaded, which he calls a kind of YouTube for human rights. For a man who has changed so many lives with his music, who would have guessed he would change the world through video? For his 3 decades-long dedication to human rights, last November, Peter Gabriel was named Man of Peace 2006 by the annual summit of Nobel Peace Prize laureates. We are deeply honored he could be here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Peter Gabriel.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sally. So I got invited to this event to celebrate social entrepreneurs, and I was thinking, social entrepreneurs, well, I guess these are entrepreneurs that like to go to a lot of parties. I understand that. And I get here, and it is a celebration of business. But the business is transforming the world. And everywhere I go, I hear stories, I see people that inspire and give you hope. It's very easy to be cynical in this world, and this place is full of people who've had a dream and with bloody-minded determination, not allowed their dream to get derailed, and worked all hours to make them real. So it's a wonderful thing to be here. I'm also here from the other end because our executive director, the wonderful Gillian Caldwell, was a Skoll Foundation award winner. And we know exactly what that means in terms of visibility and support. That has really been a key factor in allowing us to grow and hopefully reach a lot of other lives. So I'd like to thank Jeff for creating this, Sally and the amazing team of the foundation, really from that end, for making a lot of dreams into reality. This is really food for the head, it's food for the heart, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Peter. From one man of peace to another. From July 1974 through January 1975, more than 1 million people died of famine in Bangladesh. One of the worst tragedies of the 20th century became one of the most inspired ideas of the 20th century. In the middle of that famine, Muhammad Yunus, an economics teacher, professor at Chittagong University, found the classes he was teaching to be utterly irrelevant to people's lives. So he went with a group of students into a nearby village and began talking to the poor. What he realized is that very small loans to the impoverished to start businesses or buy livestock could make a huge difference. With $27 from his own pocket, he made loans to 42 Jobra villagers. 2 years later, after local banks still refused to make the loans, he resolved to do it himself, and that's how the Grameen Bank was born, and along with it, the whole microcredit movement. Most of you know the numbers by now. In the 30-plus years since, the Grameen Bank has dispersed more than $7 billion to some 7 million borrowers, most of them women, who have repaid their loans at a rate of 98%, and who with this capital succeed in bootstrapping themselves, their families, and their villages out of poverty forever. Professor Yunus's inspiration, in turn, has transformed a collateral-based system of credit forever, establishing an infinitely more just and sustainable equilibrium. Today, more than 3,000 microfinance institutions throughout the world lend small amounts of capital to some 113 million borrowers, 85 of whom are estimated to be among the world's poorest people. Today, we are one step closer to the world Muhammad Yunus envisions, where poverty has been extinguished forever with only poverty museums to remind us of what we once accepted as the way things are. For his work, Muhammad Yunus was named last year's recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great joy to welcome back to the stage for a third consecutive year our good friend, Professor Muhammad Yunus.
Thank you. Thank you. What a celebration. What a celebration. Damadam Maskalandar. It's a fantastic thing to be here. Very inspirational just to watch those movies. Got lost. I'm sure, like me, everybody got lost. We have forgot that we are here. We were with them. And what a power. What a message. And this is what this conference is all about. And thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Sally, for bringing all the people who are leading the world together and inspire each other to do more, to go back and conquer the rest of it, what we have done, and do all the 10 or whatever number I couldn't count, all the headlines. We make it happen. Because to me, I was looking at those headlines. I mean, it's something, it can be done. We are here to do it. I mean, we are the people who can make it happen. If you can take disease out of one person, you can do it for 6 billion, if there are 6 billion of them. It's a question of just doing it again and again. Billion times, 6 billion times, that's it. There's no difficulty about it. It's learning how to do it for one. That's what the difficult part of it. If you found the cure for one person, then rest of it's getting and doing it. If we don't know, with all our intelligence, all our creativity, all our pride and in our arrogance of our knowledge, how to repeat it million times, billion times, what a shame. What have we learned? We know the cure, but people don't get the medicine to get themselves cured. It's a shame. If we know how to get one poor person out of poverty, we conquered it. It's a question of now repeating it, and everybody will be out. Somehow I thought the missing part of the list was there was no poverty museum there in the headline. The last person in the world in poverty, last person in poverty, coming out, inaugurating the poverty museum. So I'm the last one. I go out, goodbye to poverty. It is the endless capability of human beings. It just doesn't have limits. If human beings can't solve this list that you presented, what good is human being anyway? We are created to solve the problems, not created to create problems. Conventional wisdom tells us very little. Conventional wisdom hides conventional blunders. We have to go and hit the blunders and make the whole circle so much bigger so that we create the world that we want to live in. That's the world we want to live in. Thank you very much. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter and Yunus, for joining us here and bringing your extraordinary lives to the stories of the award recipients we celebrate tonight. Peter will read our citations tonight. Then Jeff, Professor Yunus, and I will present the award to each of these amazing social entrepreneurs with a short pause to take a picture. And before we do that, I think I'm going to take a short pause, inspired by Stefan Chambers' 7th inning stretch. We know these are hard seats, so let's just all get up and, we don't have the tabla, but let's just, get all the kinks out for a moment before we ask you to. Do you want to lead us? Okay. Okay, so after you've stretched, if you take your seats again. All right, Peter, take it away.
The first award is for Vicky Colbert and the Escuela Nueva Foundation. Growing up in Bogota, Vicky Colbert was convinced that sustainable development and democracy could not be achieved unless all children were educated from an early age to acquire skills and knowledge to become future citizens in society. With rural Colombian teachers, she created the Escuela Nueva new school model to revolutionize education for underserved children through a more flexible approach and stronger school-community relations. She then started the Escuela Nueva Foundation to aid in expanding this local curriculum into an effective national policy and international movement. Escuela Nueva now reaches 5 million children in 14 Latin American countries, Uganda, and the Philippines. With support from Skoll, it will reach an additional 1.5 million children by 2009. Ladies and gentlemen, Vicky Colbert. Craig and Mark Kielberger, Free the Children. Shocked by a newspaper article about the murder of a child laborer turned activist that he read when he was 12, Craig Kielberger started Free the Children with his brother Mark to fight poverty, exploitation, and powerlessness among their peers. Their early classroom fundraisers have evolved into an international organization with 1,000 chapters in schools across the US and Canada. Each year, more than 200,000 students in its Youth in Action groups sponsor community service events and activities that support overseas development projects. With Skoll funding, the organization plans to establish 800 more groups in the US and raise an additional $1.5 million per year by 2009. Accepting on behalf of himself and his brother, Mark, please welcome Craig Kielberger, excuse me. Sebastian Moreau and Friends International. While traveling through Cambodia, Sebastian Moreau realized that handouts to child beggars only serve to keep them on the streets, and he started Friends International to offer holistic services to street children that allow them to reintegrate in society and become productive citizens. He also established the Child Safe campaign to encourage the wider community and businesses to be directly involved in protecting children. Sebastien and his team now devote their energy to developing an international network of organizations that provides services to more than 85,000 street children every year. With Skoll funding, they plan to involve 50 more partners in 8 countries within 5 years, ultimately serving 500,000 children every year. Please welcome award winner, Sebastian Moreau. You'll be able to notice slight variations in our poses by the end of this. Matisse Wackernagle grew up in a Matisse Wackernagle and Susan Burns are the award winners with Global Footprint Network. Matisse Wackernagle grew up with a vivid awareness of the potential for global ecological collapse and co-created the ecological footprint as part of his PhD in regional planning. Susan Burns, an engineer, founded Natural Strategies, one of the first sustainability consultancies for business. The couple launched Global Footprint Network in 2003 to advance the ecological footprint, a tool that tracks the extent to which human demand on nature exceeds what planet Earth can regenerate. This measure, now applied by countries, hundreds of cities and organizations across the world, has become a leading sustainability indicator. Global Footprint Network's goal is to institutionalize the ecological footprint in at least 10 key nations by 2015. Please welcome Matisse Wackernagle and Susan Burns. Joe Mathias and Graham Vikas. Joe Mathias went to the state of Orissa, India in 1971 to help communities ravaged by a cyclone and stayed on to help some of the poorest villages there. He founded Graham Vikas in 1979 to provide renewable energy and has transitioned its focus to encompass a holistic, community-based model of development. He believes every home must have running water and sanitation before villagers will collectively seek a better quality of life through education, job training, women's rights, and healthy practices. This model has now been implemented in 289 villages, reaching 22,347, not 348, households. But with Skoll's support, Graham Vikas now plans to bring water and sanitation to 100,000 families by 2010. Please welcome Joe Mathias. Roshani Zafar and the Kashf Foundation. A graduate of Yale and Wharton, Roshani Zafar quit her job at the World Bank to work with poor women in her native Pakistan, and in 1996 established the Kashf Foundation. Ignoring warnings that a microfinance program focusing on women who would not work in Pakistan, she enlisted the help of 5 women and used her own family's funds to start microfinance centers. Kashf delivers collateral-free microloans, savings, and life insurance products to poor women through branches that become sustainable within 18 months. 35% of its clients move out of poverty within 3 years. Kashf made 228,603 loans during 2006, has 135,797 clients, and maintains a recovery rate of 99.9%. It intends to serve 1 million clients by 2010. Please welcome Roshani Zafar. Rupert Howes and the Marine Stewardship Council. Influenced by conservationists like David Attenborough, Rupert Howes was determined to make the world more sustainable. His financial training and experience with non-profits convinced him we must work with the grain of the market to shift our economic system to a more sustainable footing, to create a world that operates within ecological limits. As CEO of Marine Stewardship Council, the MSC, he focuses on reversing the decline in global fish stocks through MSC's marine certification and eco-labeling programs. Today, 500 MSC-labeled products from 22 certified fisheries are sold in 26 countries. Skoll funding will help MSC strengthen its presence in Europe and the US and expand into the Asia-Pacific region. Please welcome award winner Rupert Howes. The next one is for Dan Wiedemann and Verite. Dan Wiedemann's experience in leading non-governmental organizations in rapidly growing countries like China convinced him of the need to improve workplace conditions globally. When he came to Verite in 2001, he took the organization beyond its factory audit roots and engaged workers in a solutions-driven, participatory model that improved working conditions for 200,000 workers by 2005. Verite's reputation for credibility and impact has prompted international firms such as Gap, Levi's, and Starbucks to seek its help for major restructurings. With support from Skoll, Verite will strengthen partnerships with NGOs in dozens of countries and will train 1,500 practitioners to replicate its model by the end of 2009. Here's award winner Dan Wiedemann. Last but definitely not least, Dorothy Stoneman and YouthBuild USA. After graduating from Harvard, Dorothy Stoneman joined the civil rights movement and lived in Harlem for 20 years. Seeing abandoned buildings, homeless people, and idle youths moved her to invite teenagers to start YouthBuild to employ young people in renovating buildings that provide homes for the homeless. Since then, 68,000 YouthBuild students enrolled in local programs supported by the National YouthBuild USA organization have produced 16,000 affordable homes in 44 states while completing their high school education at YouthBuild alternative schools. Half the youths have permanently improved their lives. Skoll's support will help 500 YouthBuild graduates tell their stories to millions of Americans, expand the program, and fund a re-entry program for adjudicated youths in 3 states. Please welcome award winner Dorothy Stoneman.
It has been said that for a parent, there is no greater place to stand than in the shadow of your children. For all the great things that Muhammad Yunus has created in this world, the greatest may just be his daughter, Monica. A graduate of Juilliard, Monica is a world-renowned soprano with the Metropolitan Opera in New York, with a voice described as utterly captivating, especially winning, and destined for superstardom. Perhaps not surprisingly, she is also a social entrepreneur. In the fall of 2005, she organized a benefit concert to raise funds for the victims of Hurricane Katrina. The success of that event led her to found the Sing for Hope Foundation, which connects artists to causes and then provides an organizational model and a network of support to communities in need of unity and healing. Last fall, she sang at her father's Nobel ceremony. We are extremely honored that she could be with us tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, here to sing 2 selections for us, the extraordinary young diva, Monica Yunus.
Gentlemen, it's a real honor for me to be here with all of you tonight. You are the world's heroes and are completely life-affirming. To that end, I've chosen an aria from Romeo and Juliet by Gounod. It's a French opera, and it's the first time we see Juliet in the opera. And she sings, "I want to live." She is coming to her party, and she's sort of entering adulthood at this stage. And she's just thrilled to see what the rest of her life will bring, as I am thrilled to see what our world will be like with people like you in it. practice in Hammersmith. And someone just recently told me that it also doubles as the Liverpool football team's rallying song. So I think it's very appropriate. And the work that you all do can sometimes probably feel lonely because you're going down uncharted paths. So it's especially nice to sing this for a group such as yourselves. You'll never walk alone.
Bravo, Monica. And thank you to your wonderful accompanist. Thank you to Alexandra. I think she could actually convert me to team sports. Before we conclude, I'd like to ask all members of the Skoll Foundation team, to a woman and man, dedicated, tireless, fearless, and formidable fellow travelers, to stand so that I can thank them. I also want to thank our Skoll Center colleagues for their exceptional partnership and months of tremendous effort, and ask them to join the Skoll Foundation team in standing. Team Skoll and Skoll Center, thank you so much. Thank my colleagues back in Palo Alto, without whose wisdom and support, none of us could do what we do. To all colleagues holding down forts all over the world so that we could be here, and to families we cherish, thank you. In closing, I really was on a mission to find an uplifting quote. I ransacked my files, the internet, drew upon favorite poets and novelists, but in the end, nothing came to me that was more powerful than Taddie's words. You help them across the river, and then they reach back and pull the next one over, and then the next, and those after. For extending hands that may yet carry us all over that river, thank you all. And now let's head to Trinity College for our celebration. Thank you, and good night.